Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Political Chit Chat Show with your regular host, Benjamin Nwaki, and our in-house panelists, Collins and Jaja. Good evening, guys.
Good evening, Ben.
Good evening. Over the last 2 weeks, there have been political infighting in the two major political parties in our country, the PDP and the APC. First of all, we actually thought it was the APC because of the judgment that came out from the Ondo State electoral petition, and then the Congress that they just had. But the PDP has seemed to be in the news more than even the APC. Collins, what's going on with the two major political parties in our country?
Confusion. Yeah, I'll start with PDP. We all agree that in the last 6 years, PDP has been a nominal opposition. When compared to APC, prior to APC taking over the center, we could see a powerful opposition in APC. We all gave it to APC. They were able to convince the world at large that PDP needed to go. One, they also were able to convince the world of the follies of PDP. We expected that having wielded that much power in the last 16 years prior to yielding to APC, when it did, PDP would come strong as a very strong opposition. But no, that has not been the case. And I reckon that being that the elections are drawing closer, the powerhouse within the party has sort of identified that there's a problem. And, you know, the saying goes that if a fish wants to get bad, it starts from the head. Secondus is the head of the PDP, whichever way we choose to look at it. And he has not been seen by certain people within the party to be doing what it needs to do. And I reckon that's the main cause. That is the main bone of contention in the party at the moment. Some people want him out, some people do not. And it appears as though the number of people who want him out as chairman of PDP outnumber those who do not want him out. And of course, you know, when there's a disagreement or divergent views within a set of people in a political party, and in this instance, there will definitely be some infighting. That's that for PDP. As for APC, we on this show discussed the judgment of the Supreme Court. At the time that judgment was given, we entered the show that evening. And we relied mainly on the bits and pieces from the Court of Appeal to assume that the Supreme Court had reached a similar judgment for that reason. Now we know that some of the reasons pointed out by the courts why judgment went in favor of the APC was with respect to certain parties that were not joined. In this instance, Buni. Alaji Buni, some people hold the view, should not hold that position as chairman of APC, caretaker chairman, in quote now, of APC. And those people who hold that view are sort of afraid that if he continues to hold that position, following the next election cycle, there will be problems. I hold that view as well. Others think that the position of a caretaker chairman is not one that should warrant or that should be tagged holding a different position as that of a governor. That argument does not hold water in my view. Now, that is the bone of contention in the APC and the reason why the infighting is going on. I would pause here because there's just a lot to talk about these two political parties, in my view, today.
Jaja, do you share different opinions from what Collins have just talked about the two major political parties in Nigeria?
I wouldn't say I ordinarily share a different opinion. What I would say is that I want to situate some of the things he has mentioned in proper context.
Okay.
Now, the first thing about PDP that people need to know is that from inception up to this time, they have not had a good end to their chairman's, exit. Everyone has a dramatic ending that usually was never, good. And it's for basic reasons.
Are you talking about from 1999 when PDP came into
Yes,
existence?
I can list them from Ekweme to La to Gimade.
I thought Ekweme resigned to contest for the presidency.
Definitely. His was by and large a matter of expediency, yes. But beyond that, look at all of them. There's always been one crisis from another. The whole idea is for political positioning, political realignment in terms of how to see how one could easily benefit from the coming election. That is one, to situate that. In the case of Secondus, the truth about it and the hue and cry for his ouster, one must understand that, of course, there are real contravening interests in PDP. And
can you expatiate on that, please?
Definitely. The major person that wants Secondus out is his own benefactor, is his own backer, and that is Governor Nyesom Wike. Yes. However, there are other contravening factors. There are other parties that also have to, balance things out, and because of their interest, talking about Tamboa, talking about Tiku, talking about Saraki. Now, you have to understand the genesis of Wike and Secondus issue. It all started in the Bayelsa election. That was the genesis, or at least the tipping point. What do I mean? The leaders of the party wanted Alaibe, right? But it was alleged that Secondus took something from Dixon. It's an allegation, and now went ahead and pushed Diri. They roundly lost that election because of that. And the only saving grace was that Supreme Court overturned the whole process because of APC's carelessness.
But sorry, Jaja, with the Supreme Court judgment that brought PDP back to power in Bayelsa State, shouldn't have put an end to whatsoever crisis, the Alaibe not getting the ticket has cost.
Now, you have to understand, when you, as a politician, put a person there, obviously, you seek to ensure that your interest is protected. But now, from Wike's point of view, this man cannot be protected. And anybody that seeks to stand by him, for him, I feel is a political, strategy to identify who and who are Secondus backers in line of the next convention. I think that is Wike's own play. Why do I say so? You cannot be crying more than you bereave. Many people have had, just as Collins mentioned, said that Secondus has been cold, he has not been vibrant, or whatnot. So Wike say, okay, let me withdraw him. But you now see other people trying to keep him. There are many reasons for that. There is not just one reason. But chiefly, they don't want Wike to be overbearing, and they don't want him to have the foothold in line for the next convention. All this we are saying is in line for the next convention. There's an overarching...
Wike seems to be a very big factor in PDP.
No doubt, no doubt.
PDP has 13 governors as at present.
Yes.
Why is Wike case different?
Wike is at present one of the most vocal. He's one of the money bags that help sustain the party. He has been there even when the PDP first had a crisis just after the election in 2015, talking about the Ahmadu Sharif issue. He was the one, and with Fayose and a lot of people that rallied around to ensure that the party survived that very heavy storm.
But some people will say they actually brought Ahmadu Sharif to PDP, Wike and Fayose that you just mentioned.
Definitely. And when they noticed that he was a Trojan horse, they had to find a way to dismember him before they
will I say Wike have a way of bringing in people that does not align with his ideology? Because if he brought Ahmadu Sharif in the first place and Ahmadu Sharif didn't align with his ideology. Now he brought Secondus, and Secondus, again, did not align with his ideology.
No, in response to that, I have to clarify to you and our viewers that the PDP is such a dynamic party. It's not like, for instance, the APC, where everyone is beholden to, pardon me, by and large, two leaders, that is Buhari and Tinubu. PDP is a well-structured party with several contravening interests that from time to time tend to contend or realign, contend and realign. So Wike is just one of those parties. And that is one of the things that played out in Secondus' soft landing. If truly Wike had full control of the structures and architecture of the party, there's no way Secondus would be speaking and will be there as we speak. What will happen is that they will remove him, probably Secondus will go to court and there will be crisis in the party. However, because the dynamics of the party has different blocks, very relevant and powerful blocks, there's always a balancing of interest in view of the general interest of the party. So I wouldn't necessarily say that Wike brings or supports the wrong person. However, it's because of
Go on, Judge. I would like to add to that when you finish.
Usually it's because of the structure of the party, the array of interest that makes it difficult for one person to control. So beyond the rumors about taking money and all that, beyond that, really, there is a structure in place that allows the party chairman to do what he feels may be right. However, if the power blocks align in such a way that want him out, then he has to go, like just in this case, as at of present. Now, for APC's own case, if I may briefly add, I still stand with Collins and my previous or earlier assertions, though we are all yet to see the full judgment of the Supreme Court. The argument by some of the APC stakeholders is that the Supreme Court said, oh, the extraordinary committee is an ad hoc committee trying to, find a way to run away from that clause. Is it clause 18 now or clause 17 of their constitution? And I think sections 183 of the 99 constitution. Now, in both instances, of course, it's clear, a governor cannot hold executive position in both capacity and any other, function that commands that kind of responsibility. Now, if one has to situate that argument very well, if it's an ad hoc committee as they claim, usually an ad hoc means for some time, which initially was for 6 months. After 6 months, there was no renewal. After possibly another 6 months, there still has not been any renewal. All we have heard is that the president has extended. The president is not the constitution of the APC. The president is not a NEC in itself. The president is a member of NEC, and that so has not been constituted. I still maintain and I submit that the APC as of now, and those who are handling APC have to be careful. They are standing on a very slippery ground. The reality is that if this were to be pushed, which is already being pushed by some parties, so for instance, in Anambra already, Mr. Mogalu has already, amended his processes to now question the legitimacy of Governor Mala Buni's, authority as the chairman, and this would definitely go up to the Supreme Court, which will now be addressed. Therefore, canceling almost all their or at least they are going to have the prospects of most of their activities or most of their actions being cancelled at the Supreme Court. There's an article by 2 or 3 of their legal advisors. One was from Ogala, one was from Muiz Banere. Both were former legal advisors. Yeah. And they are both warned that they need to really reassess what they are doing. Obviously, those who are standing with Malabuni all have interest in view of 2023. Same with in the case of what's his name, Uche Secondus in PDP.
Okay, thank you very much for that great analysis. Collins, since PDP lost power in 2015, Wike has been like a rallying point for PDP. He has been a topic in PDP. What is special about Governor Wike?
There's something we mustn't hide from. It's the fact that a political party that used to wield as much power as PDP, and purportedly the largest political party in Africa, I don't quite agree with that statement every time they make it, does need some voice. And there's something we must agree to right now. And before I go on, the voice will be in form of both vocal capacity to speak when they ought to speak, in addition to financial prowess. It appears Wike has both. Wike seems to be the only governor of the PDP today, or one of the prominent persons of the PDP today, that speaks without fear, that speaks and sort of contradicts the opposition. Now, I don't know if you've noticed this about Wike as well. He seems to have friends even in the opposition. I saw a video recently where he was where they were commissioning something in Rivers State, and a minister from the opposition was in attendance, which is quite impressive. So Wike seems to have the dexterity of a man who can lead. And it appears no one seems to be opposing that. From the perspective of the fact that he's not just a prominent figure in the PDP, he also is a sitting governor. That seems to work out for him just perfectly well. And there's nothing special about him. He seems to just be taking the right steps at the right time and speaking when he ought to speak. We agree now that the PDP has been really docile. Even in its docility, some persons have spoken out, and Wike seems to be that man who speaks out when he needs to speak out. There's the argument also that he splashes money when it is needed by the party. Well, I have nothing to prove that is true or untrue. But if that is the case, that's the man everybody will follow. Everybody wants to go in the direction of the money. And yeah, we should cut Wike some slack and give him his due in this time when Nigeria needs an opposition party. Wike has sort of stood out in the opposition to speak when he needs to speak.
Thank you very much, Collins. Jaja, now, since PDP lost power, it seems like there's no opposition in Nigeria because the APC seem to get away with anything they do. There's nobody criticizing them. There's nobody trying to rubbish their policy. I mean, I remember when PDP was in power and the Chibok girls were kidnapped. The APC made a mess of PDP's government. They rubbished the country in the name of trying to bring down the government. And they succeeded in doing that, and they got into power in 2015. Why is PDP such a bad opposition, Jaja?
We have to situate this whole thing very, very carefully. For PDP, I think what the beginning of their travails happened in, I think, Ojota in 2012, where there was a need to remove subsidy, and that didn't go well with the Nigerian populace. At that point, the Nigerian populace left him. Like, this is not it. So the opposition noticed that and immediately swung into action using all manner of propaganda. They also took out steps to, align. And that's what we now have when we call what we call APC. And you also have to understand too that the temperament of the CEC, by and large, gave them that impetus. Why do I say? There was one who, though he had boys, DSS, who would want or do one or two to scruple people, but it was not the nature of his government to speak and someone will come and hound you. There are a lot of people insulting.
Is that not true democracy, Jaja?
Definitely. So when the time came, they were able to, they were highly responsible. spewing lies now, as most people can see, and people caught up, due to emotions and other factors, gullibly caught on to that wave, and APC came into power. Now, unfortunately for most Nigerians, if not all, the character of this present president is one that does not even tolerate nonsense. And everyone from both the political players to the ordinary citizen knows that you have freedom of speech, but probably there may not be freedom after speech, as a matter of saying. And that has been seen with so many examples in the government. It is alleged that a lot of people have just gone missing, and we see how the handling of protests, we see the handling of how they are now gagging the media, social media, and all what. I think for PDP, for me the loss is that when Jonathan had stepped down, maybe because of the allegation of corruption against him and perhaps a deal, he chose not to be in active leadership of the party. Ideally, Jonathan is already the de facto leader of PDP and ought to show leadership, true leadership of opposition. What we saw was him receding to the background and then leaving an empty space, a space which the likes of people like Wike filled. No one is doubting it. Wike is, by and large, a topic of conversation in the PDP. But because of the way the PDP is structured, right, it's difficult for him to have that overarching, overbearing influence. Even when Obasanjo was there were other contending forces that checkmated him. That's why he did not get the third term, and that's why he could not get away with almost everything he wanted to. So when the argument comes that PDP is not vibrant and everything, you also have to understand that they were a party in power. They understand the nuances of true governance. At least that's some of the argument they put out. And they cannot irresponsibly be spewing the kind of rhetoric the APC had. Remember, we're in a different time. The insecurity level is too high. And having to spew so much, the reality is that it could ignite the country, it could cause a coup, it could cause anarchy. Any little thing at this point
is providing a responsive or a responsible position.
That is the argument. That is not necessarily my position, but that is the argument. And it seems like a fair argument, because if we look at the results of 2019, beyond the fact that PDP now has lost 3 governors, they gained well over
17 governors.
17 governors and counting. But with APC knowing that they have failed the Nigerian people in their policies and in their promises, started using underhand tactics. It is alleged in some instances, they will come and greet you and tell you that if you don't do this, will bring EFCC for you. And
so the saying that PDP governors are saying that APC is coercing their governors and threatening them, and that's why we have seen some PDP governors jumping ship. Is that true, Jaja?
By and large, that is the allegation in the public space. It's hard to tell. As we have spoken in this our conversation here in politics chit chat, we see that, for instance, a Devu Mahi, perhaps it's for personal reasons. Maybe the real background story is that he has issues that he may need to answer for the moment immunity is stripped of him. Same for Ayade, as well as Matawali. So it is a real issue that is a source of concern. The APC presently are using all manner of tactics to bring more people to their fold. Mind you, in politics, people always go to the winning party anyways, because they want to, by and large, bolster their chances of winning. So yes, that is part of I think that's part of the dynamic that is at play, both in the APC and PDP at this moment.
Jaja, I am, to a large extent, I'm inclined to agree with you. Because think about it logically, why would anyone wake up in the morning and say they're leaving PDP to join APC? In this day and age, when the reputation of the APC has sort of gone down the drain in the last 6 years. Every single promises they made to the Nigerian people, every single one of them has not come to fruition. They've literally failed Nigeria. Now, this does not hide the fact that they've done well in a few things, but from a general perspective, looking at it from a holistic perspective, APC has failed Nigeria. Now, why would a governor wake up in the morning knowing that a party, as assessed by the Nigerian people, has scored below par, scored really low? Why would you wake up and join that party? There's always a backstory to all of this. And it is on the basis of all of this that I am inclined. It's on the basis of all of this that I'm inclined to agree that the APC is sort of using some backhand and some tactics to coerce some of these governors and these persons in PDP to join the APC. And it brings me to another thought, which is if your hands were clean in the first place, you would not be complaining of this. We would not be assuming that you were coerced into a party. Then if the allegation of coercion is indeed true, it therefore means that there's a perception that these governors' hands are not clean. So it's really sad, the downward spiral that the country is going at the moment from a political perspective, when you hear that, when you expect oppositions to hold and stand firm, rather instead of doing that, you find people, prominent persons in the opposition party, moving to join the party in power. It means in the next election cycle, there will be a lot of difficulty in getting this party out of power, or at least reprimanding them. Because if indeed votes count, if indeed things go the way they ought to go, then this is an opportunity for us to reprimand this party. We should see people leaving the APC to join PDP, and not the other way around.
If I may butt in, Collins, the truth about the gale of defection is one that is, I'm not really, I'm not share the sentiments of people that, are defecting to APC as at present and see it as an issue, because this is not the appropriate time to really measure or judge the status of where things are. The time you will see real defection is either a bit before, if it is clear that parties or certain interests are not able to clinch, their respective structures during or just before or after a convention. The APC convention is one that I'm keenly watching, and I'm sure all political observers are watching. It was want to see how that will pan out. Same with the PDP. I wager that when that happens, that's the APC convention, we'll see two things will happen. One, either an implosion, or two, a massive gale of defection back to PDP. And both parties have, the way they have adjusted their constitution allows for people to come in at short notice and use their platform to write for, So that is the situation on ground. That is it. Unfortunately, okay, you want to say something?
So sorry, before you go on, I think you do have a point there. However, I will still go back to the earlier points Ben raised from the question. If indeed there is coercion, there must be a corresponding reason why that coercion is in place. You will not force me against my will to do certain things, unless, of course, you have something that you can hold me by. If APC, now holding the power structures of Nigeria, indeed has a lot to hold some of these persons by, there's a good chance that we may not see as many defections as we project.
Definitely.
Yes. And if that is the case, it takes us back to square one. People will remain in the party grumbling, afraid to leave because they do not want to then fall in the rot of the powers that be.
there are too many players in the APC that if you give them a chance now, they would run back to PDP or any other fringe party. That is without a question. But you know, there's this proverb. The best way I can translate it in English is that no matter how you wash your butts, pardon me for the viewers, if you check it, you always have a smell. And that is the nature of our politics and governance system here. There's hardly anybody that the government would want to review that will not have something that it can pin on. But that will not be, that I reckon will not hold as at December 31st, 2021. From 1st of January 2022, I can tell you that's the official kickstarting of an election year. And from there, there'll be campaigning galore, serious campaigning, and nobody would even care. By that time, it's expected that Buhari would be lame duck president. However, Buhari still remains a factor, regardless. But many people will now be more daring to take their chances to ensure that their own political survival is well situated in the best party that can fill them.
Now, Jaja, I want to say something. Sorry, Ben.
Go on.
You know, to a large extent, I agree with you, but I'll defer to a point, and which is the fact that, and I'll draw your mind back to something. Remember when Fayose lost the election, or rather, when Fayose was leaving office, and the EFCC tweeted.
Yeah, that was a funny one, isn't it?
And they went ahead to delete it. Gentlemen, a political party in power at the center that has our law enforcement agencies at its wings and caprices. What do you think it will do when the elections are near? Do you not think it will want to enforce some of those powers?
I remember I did ask Jaja, is that why a lot of PDP governors are complaining? Because the PDP governors are complaining that APC is already coercing their members.
Yeah, so I'm driving at something you said now. So closer to the election year, when the political power at the center sees that things may not go its way, you do not think it may employ the powers of our law enforcement agencies against opposition? It's a rhetorical question.
No. I can answer that clearly. It's not a new thing. Even in 2015 and 14, Jonathan also employed that tactic. But the truth about it is that politics is like the wind. It blows in several directions. As the time goes, the wind will start blowing, and then we will now know, or at least start getting a glimpse of where the direction is. In an election year, the only way you employ EFCC is just to distract, but it will not stop politicking. It won't stop electioneering. People, the politicians will, I can say safely, will do whatever is needed to be on a platform that best serves their interest, regardless of or whether or not EFCC is a threat.
You know,
at this time, of course,
I share the same opinion with you, Jaja. I remember in 2015 when Jonathan lost the presidential election. You know, Amechi did say that the chicken has come home to roast, referring to Wike being the PDP candidate. You know, since Jonathan have already lost the presidential election, you know, it was going to follow suit with APC winning the governorship election. Don't forget, they did the presidential election before the governorship election. Yes. You know, and politicians still did what politicians have to do, and the Wike won the election. And if you remember, they were calling Wike a caretaker governor because they believed, you know. But when they caught, don't forget, the tribunal actually sacked Wike. The appeal court actually sacked Wike.
For Supreme Court.
Now thinking about it, that's frightening. You know, it was the Supreme Court that gave hope, you know, that gave life to his.
And people said the Supreme Court. Some people alleged that the Supreme Court was compromised. Sadly, for people to accept that, it was really sad.
People, you have to call name. I mean, I have to call the name of whoever that tried to desecrate our courts. That was Amechi alleging. And Amechi forgot the Supreme Court made him a governor too.
Yes, really sad.
It's sad.
Rather
It's a sad one.
unfortunate. It's unfortunate.
Really
it's a-
sad and unfortunate.
And I
However,
think
there's something you guys are
commentaries were
missing
there.
here. Ben, before I let you go on to follow the coherence we were following earlier on, there's something we are missing here. You're bringing an analogy of the Goodluck Jonathan administration, forgetting that the Goodluck Jonathan administration was very, if you ask me, when compared to this administration, democratic. Democratic to the extent that
I did say that to Jaja earlier.
He refused and did not use the institutions of our
apparatus
polity,
of government.
yes, to enforce or sort of quieting the opposition. He didn't. Well, that's something I am afraid this administration may do.
Sorry. I did ask Jaja that if PDP was playing a good opposition, because what Jaja said was because PDP have been in government, they know how tedious the task of governing actually is, So for that reason, they are cutting APC a slack by not being harsh on them in criticizing them, So I did ask Jaja, does that mean that PDP is playing a good opposition? And I'm going to ask you that question.
Jaja,
does that mean PDP is playing good opposition?
PDP is playing a terrible opposition. The people who made up APC when they were after PDP were all members of PDP and knew how hard governance was. But they did not slack. They went after the party. They did everything to bring PDP to disrepute.
If I may butt in, the truth about it is that it was not PDP they brought into disrepute in the long run. It's Nigeria. By what they did, they weakened our national security, exposed us to all manner of, harm. Nigeria, part of the fallout of that electioneering season is what we are reaping today, where we have all manner of people, the insecurity in the north, the instability in certain parts of our country.
Talking about insecurity in the north, have you heard that Kaduna State have closed down all schools? So there are no schools in Kaduna State anymore.
They have closed it down temporarily to address the security issues.
Whether temporary or permanently, but that's a sad one. That's a very sad one.
Of course it is.
It's indeed sad. I don't know if we all recall that sometime not in the distant past, the governor of Kaduna State took his son and enrolled him in a public school. And I don't know if we also know that secretly, when it was time, he did it in public glare in the eyes of the press. And when it was time for him to secretly withdraw his son, he did it through the back door and we did not know. And then his concern then was, the security situation in the state. And my question was, is he implying that his children are sacred cows or two that should not come to harm, and whereas other people's children should be the sacrifice that will be tendered to these marauders? It was a question that I battled with for a while. And now this. It's really sad.